Good morning. On behalf of the Central Bank from Curaçao and St. Martin, I would like to welcome you to our webinar titled Mastering Financial Resilience, Regional Edition. My name is Shakina Dare, and I will be your moderator for today. In recent years, we have experienced several or certain disasters, continued market volatility, crises, all those types of factors that actually affect the way we need to structure our economic, monetary, supervisory, and social agenda. These elements have highlighted the importance of financial literacy, that is the knowledge and skills that individuals, but also investors, business owners, etc., would need in order for them to make effective financial decisions. But more so, the focus is not only on improving this financial literacy, but extending that or expanding that toward the focus on financial resilience and financial well-being. Financial resilience being the ability to back up or to bounce back from certain events, unfortunate events a lot of times. And the second one regarding financial well-being, which is having low current financial stress and also high future financial security. Financial well-being being the fact of a total component of being happy and content with your financial situation. From a perspective of the purpose of this webinar, there are several reasons why we conducted this webinar. Two of the main perspectives is the fact that the Caribbean Working Group, as part of the International Forum for Investor Education, has been focused in a couple of years already to strengthen financial resiliency in the Caribbean region. That is one reason for which the I Will initiative was created. Another reason is the IOSCO, which is International Organization of Securities Commissions. Their World Investor Week initiative also started from a perspective of focusing on a global campaign on investor education, investor protection, and together bundling those two perspectives, the I Will initiative was created. So you may ask yourself as a new participant that is unaware of this initiative, why was this initiative created? Well, you can see it as three perspectives. The first one was to assign and highlight the level of financial resilience within the Caribbean region. The second one is highlighting and identifying the collective ability of our countries in order to respond to events that affect us financially, physically, socially. And the third one is to identify a collective ability to recover from such setbacks and also aftershocks. So again, highlighting the topic of financial resilience, having the ability to bounce back after you're affected by certain unfortunate events. As you can see, there are several logos below because we have several countries and jurisdictions participating in this initiative. And some of these will also present today. We have Trinidad and Tobago presenting. We have the Bahamas presenting. We have the IOSCO Secretary General who will deliver a keynote speech. We will also have our own colleagues from the CBCS. So from the perspective of Curaçao and St. Martin also participating. So we look forward to have all of your comments and feedback throughout the event. So unfortunately, as I indicated earlier, during the invitations that I sent, our president was going to provide some welcome words. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, he was unable to present us those welcome words. But I'm happy to share with you the panel of experts that we have today. So we will first start with Mr. Stewart Miller. He manages the Investor Education and Communications Unit of the Office of the Executive Director of the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, where he has been employed in various capacities over the last 10 years. He has worn several hats notably as a business reporter with a leading local daily newspaper and over a decade in the private sector of the wealth management industry with international financial institutions, where his responsibilities included relationship management and business development. Today, he will discuss the general idea behind the I Will initiative, and also from a regional perspective, he will provide his input. Then we will have Miss Nicole Bachan. I hope I'm pronouncing Bachan correctly. Okay. She currently serves as a senior communication officer at the TTSEC, which is the Trinidad and Tobago Securities and Exchange Commission, in the Communications and Educations Department. She has over 11 years experience in the field of communication and public relations. For over 5 years, she has also been leading and executing national investor education outreach programs at the TTSEC, developing investor education tools and conceptualizing and implementing strategies and campaigns toward the development of the TTSEC's investor education program and its social media presence. She today will discuss from the perspective of Trinidad and Tobago how the I Will campaign was implemented. Afterward, we will have our colleague, Mr. Errol Cova, who is currently head of the Investment Institutions and Trust Supervision Department at the CBCS. He has over 20 years of experience in the financial services and supervisory sector, mainly in the securities business and exchanges, fund administrators, and trust service providers. He has also assisted with the mutual evaluation of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force and also the General Financial Action Task Force, and a peer review on a global forum of transparency and exchange of information of the OECD. He currently also chairs the innovation platform of the CBCS. He is the CBCS's representative on the IFI, which is the International Forum on Investor Education Global Board. And as of next year, he will also be the transitional acting chair of this IFI Global Forum. He holds a degree in industrial engineering and MBA in finance and international business. Today, he will discuss how the I Will campaign was implemented from the perspective of Curaçao and Sint Maarten. After our panel of experts, we will also have the Honorable Mr. Paul Andrews, who is currently the Secretary General of the IOSCO. We are very happy that he has been able to deliver a keynote speech for us. So we look forward to having him also on board. And just to give you a little bit of introduction about him, he joined IOSCO in March 2016 after 18 years at the FINRA, which is the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. He was reappointed to a second term in March 2019. From 2003 to March 2016, he served as Vice President and Managing Director, International Affairs at FINRA, the largest independent regulator for all U.S. securities firms. Before he started at FINRA, he also spent 8 years at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, where he worked in the Division of Market Regulation and the Office of the General Counsel. Before that, he spent four years in private legal practice in Washington, D.C. He is a graduate of the Catholic University School of Law in Washington and of Villanova University in Pennsylvania. After our honorable speakers and a panel of experts, we will also have a panel discussion. Note, by the way, that whatever questions that you have or comments, please feel free during the presentations to provide your feedback whenever you'd like. And of course, at the end, you will be able to get answers to your questions based on the panel discussion. During the panel discussion, we will also have another colleague of us joining, which is Ms. Eliangela Eli Musquit. She is examiner of the Investment Institutions and Trust Supervision Department at the CBCS. She brings approximately 20 years of experience from the financial services sector, covering a wide range of expertise as investor regulations manager, projects manager, conversion owner, training partner, and know your customer / AML manager, which is anti-money laundering manager. As a training partner, she has also facilitated several product and soft skills trainings such as risk management, insight colors, assertiveness, effective business writing, and a variety of leadership trainings. She holds a bachelor's degree in international business and languages and a master's degree in executive financial management. We are very happy to have the different panel of experts together today, and we look forward to all the feedback of the different participants also. Another thing important for me to note before we kick off with the first speaker is that all questions and comments that you have, please type those in your WebEx control panel, which indicates chat, like an icon chat above your screen or below your screen. On that note, I would like for us to start with Mr. Stewart Miller. Thank you for being here, and please feel free to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Shakina. IOSCO Secretary General Paul Andrews, my Caribbean Working Group colleagues and fellow presenters, and each of you, ladies and gentlemen, joining us for this webinar, good morning. First, I would like to thank Errol and the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin for inviting me to provide an overview of the regional I Will Financial Resilience campaign that the Caribbean Working Group, the Americas chapter of the International Forum for Investor Education, or IFI, is implementing, both as a part of IOSCO's Investor Education Week 2020 global campaign, but also as a key aspect of our broader investor education efforts. By way of background, the Caribbean Working Group has been meeting for over 6 years. The group started after a few pioneering members attended the 2014 IOSCO IFI Annual Investor Education Global Conference and recognized that small growth and emerging markets regulators had a monumental task to advance investor education and financial capability in their various jurisdictions. Coming from smaller jurisdictions relative to some of the large IOSCO securities regulators, we had to find innovative ways to build our core capacity and establish baselines to provide our citizens and residents with a high level of investor education and financial capacity content. At the outset, only 4 members had resources dedicated to financial capability and investor education programs and strategy development. Now, each of our members, which collectively represent 16 jurisdictions across the region, has at least some resources dedicated to strengthening financial knowledge, skills, capability, and understanding of financial markets. Of note, our membership consists of securities regulators, super regulators, and central banks. Since we started, we have been meeting consistently, working remotely long before it was in vogue to do so. Also, every year until this one, we have found a way to get together for a face-to-face meeting at least once during the year, where IFI would assist us by arranging specialists and experts relative to our needs to advance our capacity, providing us with access to world-leading experts, technical knowledge, world-class content and tools, and cutting-edge insight into the developing financial capability investor education space. Speaking of IFI, we were very fortunate at the outset to have secured their unwavering commitment and to help and to guide us. In particular, I would like to recognize Catherine Edmondson, the IFI Executive Director, who has been a linchpin in supporting us since our inception. Many thanks to IFI and Executive Director Edmondson for the commitment to our shared capacity building objectives. Among its priorities, the working group has used our meetings to consider fintech issues, how they impact our jurisdictions and investors, and how to address them within the scope of our various mandates. We have also used the Caribbean Working Group framework to explore ways to address financial education at a governmental level, and with the support of nonprofit partners. Members have been able to learn from each other and adapt approaches in these regards to meet their own circumstances. Not to be understated, these meetings have also served to strengthen our sense of connection with each other and provide some moral support as we struggled to improve on our investor education and financial literacy programs in our jurisdictions, while tending to the various priorities of the regulators we work for. Over the years, I think I can comfortably say we have truly grown together. Getting back to the I Will campaign, the Caribbean Working Group has tried to do something as a region to participate in IOSCO's World Investor Week for several years now, with initiatives ranging from video contributions from members, regulators across the Caribbean, to last year's special cryptocurrency information and pledge campaign, where we collaborated to develop inviting and informative content to caution investors about cryptocurrency risk and to get them to start asking the critical questions they should before investing in the new asset class. The working group has allowed us to help each other to ensure that no matter how challenged with resources, infrastructural or other constraints we might have been, we were able to participate in the marvelous World Investor Week initiative and campaign of IOSCO. Despite the many challenges that 2020 has brought, we have continued with our commitment to have a regional initiative for World Investor Week. The I Will campaign launched this year is all about encouraging and fostering a focus on financial resilience, and Shakina did an excellent job of telling you what financial resilience was, so I won't repeat that, and to getting people to make a commitment really to themselves to take actions to be more financially resilient. Financial resilience has been on our minds heading into 2020, long before the world started to grapple with the coronavirus pandemic. Climate events, and in particular hurricanes, were a major part of the impetus for us, as so many of our jurisdictions lie in the hurricane belt and have experienced firsthand the undeniable trend of more active storm seasons with increasingly powerful storms marked by greater rainfall and higher storm surges. Much devastation was wrought on our member jurisdictions following Hurricanes Irma and Maria in 2017. And of course, after the strongest Atlantic hurricane on record to impact a landmass, Hurricane Dorian, ever so slowly tore through the islands of the Bahamas, the northern Bahamas, in September of last year. This year's hurricane season, of course, has been so busy that we've all had a refresher course on the Greek alphabet. We're now on Hurricane Iota, which is impacting Central America now. For all of our jurisdictions, however, the rise of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020 put a fine point on the need for financial resilience in our personal lives, in our families, in our small and medium-sized businesses, in our communities, and at a national level, as tourism, travel basically ground to a halt in many jurisdictions. And the pressure on the global economy was so great that it even impacted oil prices and production. So we thought it would be appropriate to focus our investor education group project, if I can call it that, around the concept of financial resilience. Admittedly, it has been a challenging concept to get the messaging quite right on. The very urgency of the topic is in fact a part of the challenge. When the need for financial resilience is the greatest, we perhaps have the least influence to ensure it is in place for those who need it the most. You know, at the end of the day, financial resilience may be a product of being financially literate and exercising financial capability over time, leading up to a crisis. When the economy collapses or a hurricane passes through and you're out of a job along with so many others in your community, well, you're just not positioned to start building the emergency fund that ideally you would have already had in place, or to get a second job, for example. Taking our lead from the Trinidad and Tobago Securities and Exchange Commission, the group decided the way to go about this was to launch the I Will campaign, to focus messaging on what people, families, small businesses and entrepreneurs within our communities could do now or commit to do in the future to be more financially resilient. The idea was to use the understanding of the need for financial resilience brought about by unfolding events to reinforce critical investor education and financial capability concepts. Among the initiatives, social media content has been developed around the I Will theme with customizable key messages like, I will improve my financial knowledge as it is an important part of my overall financial wellness, and I will create a financial plan and put it in writing. These are just two of the many examples. The flexible campaign is open so that jurisdictions can hone the messaging and initiatives to the aspects of financial resilience that they think will most resonate with the communities they serve, and almost every member is participating in some fashion according to the perceived needs and capacity that they have during these times. So in jurisdictions where the focus has been on youth, The campaign is being tailored to promote financial resilience amongst youth. In those where vulnerabilities amongst women were observed, that has taken on a financial resilience element or focus. I'm sure the team from Curacao and St. Martin will tell you about their efforts regarding entrepreneurial and small business resilience. And I want to note that throughout the region, we have witnessed increased financial scams such as pyramid schemes during the pandemic. As a result, several jurisdictions have focused their efforts on improving financial resilience with respect to knowing the red flags and not falling prey to these scams. TTSEC is up next on the agenda, and I'm sure they'll tell you more about their efforts in this regard. Here in the Bahamas, we hosted a webinar focusing on financial resilience schemes. And our enforcement team appeared on a leading morning radio talk show to help people understand the warning signs of these frauds in light of the increased incidences of these schemes in the Bahamas. In the Bahamas, we are also in the process of launching our I Will social media campaign, which will involve the social media content developed for the group and a video series featuring respected thought leaders and opinion leaders in our community with their brief personal thoughts on how to be more financially resilient. Of note, at the outset of October, coinciding with the official launch of World Investor Week, the Prime Minister of the Bahamas also formally recognized the importance of financial resilience in the official proclamation of the month of October as Investor Education Month in the Bahamas, saying that the global coronavirus pandemic and recent climate events have reinforced the need for citizens and the community to ensure their financial resilience. One of the hallmarks of our work as a group is using learning from our experiences to feed back into and improve what we are doing. We have already discussed this as a group and will compile what we learned to improve our efforts to help our residents be more financially resilient and really have an impact in their lives to improve their overall well-being. So we look forward to learning from our efforts now to strengthen our capacity to move through this pandemic and to prepare for the future, the shocks we may be able to anticipate, like continued climate events and the unforeseen shocks that almost certainly lie ahead also. The Caribbean Working Group remains committed to working together to ensure our citizens and residents are better positioned to be financially resilient through improved investor and financial education. And that brings me to the end of my overview for today. I thank you all for listening and turn the microphone and camera back to Shakina.
Thank you for your great insights, Stewart. Thank you for being here also. I would like to further go on to Nicole Bachan. Thank you for being here, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Shakina. Just give me a minute while I share my presentation. All right. So good morning, everyone. And the Trinidad and Tobago Securities and Exchange Commission is particularly proud to be part of this webinar hosted by Curacao and the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Martin. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about who we are, financial resiliency in the context of Trinidad and Tobago, resiliency during a pandemic, and the shift to social media. Financial resiliency responds to pyramid schemes and scams, and our World Investor Week focus and its impacts. So just a brief on the Securities and Exchange Commission in Trinidad and Tobago. We are one of 3 regulators operating in the local financial sector alongside Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago and the Financial Intelligence Unit. And we all would cohesively together and report directly to the Ministry of Finance. We're primarily responsible for regulating the industry that deals with stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And recently, there's a joint initiative among the three regulators to launch a financial innovation hub, a regulatory sandbox to basically test innovative financial products and services and fintechs such as e-money issuers and cryptocurrencies. Now, as Stewart mentioned, financial resiliency in the Caribbean focus primarily on natural disasters, from hurricanes, storms, storm surges that come with it, earthquakes as well. From 2018 to 2019, the conversation has been going on in the Caribbean and the Caribbean Working Group with regard to financial resiliency in this regard. However, during the pandemic, a new phase of the resiliency came to the fore. And the Commission, the Securities and Exchange Commission, we had to adapt and adjust our investor education program to go completely virtual, completely online. And now our challenge was, how do we reach new people, and how do we reach people basically when the core of the pandemic was at the fore? There was need for appropriate messaging to reach persons, and we focused on health as that was a #1 priority at the time. And then the economic short-term and long-term projections came into the fore. Now, as persons got more familiar with the restrictions, they were able to assess their situation locally and look at the other factors impacting besides health: job loss, longevity of the impact. How long am I going to have to cater for the duration of this impact? The need for healthcare and safety, the increased price of goods and services. Crime also became a factor. Financial needs in the local arena became more and more a priority. So there was a core focus on virtual and social media, and there was a need for more social media input from the SEC. And now, why is this important? We looked at the stats, and locally, we found, if we look at the graph, from April, May, you're seeing there's an upward trend towards the use of social media, primarily in Facebook. So we utilized some of these tools, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, to help push a lot of our messaging. We started with health as #1, so get persons thinking along the lines of, the normal pandemic health and safety measures: washing hands, wear your mask, stay at home, that sort of thing. And we kept the conversations going, focusing on health. Then came other adaptations to the pandemic, focusing strictly on finances, conducting financial assessments, looking at the impacts, and focusing on job loss, reduced income. And we also spoke about fraudsters thriving during these challenging times. The conversation also shifted to knowing your rights as an investor, your rights and responsibilities. And the Commission hosted an Ask the TTSEC live series that focused primarily on informing persons about the securities industry and what's happening with regard to that. Now, adapting to the social media pandemic, we looked at financial management from the context of protecting your hard-earned money. And we looked at two examples where fraudsters focused on adapting to the pandemic using COVID-19. And we adapted 2 videos for the local context in this regard. And then came the pyramid scheme fiasco that happened in Trinidad and Tobago. From around early August or thereabouts, the Commission was alerted to a number of activities happening in the local sphere as it related to pyramid schemes. And a lot of it focused on communities and having communities getting more involved in this, this type of scheme. And we had to segue away from using the word investment scheme, because particularly it was not an investment, it was a scam, and was careful use of the different types of words that were being used in sharing messages about this pyramid scheme. And we also noticed that there was a surge of different types of schemes happening in different ways, in different systems, and that sort of thing. And we had to address every one of them. So we talked specifically about red flags of pyramid schemes, red flags of investment fraud, red flags of a fraudster, and we focused a lot on that early in August. And then the Commission, along with the Central Bank and the FIU, issued a public advisory, a joint regulatory statement focusing on pyramid schemes and its presenting as false investment opportunities, and they leverage on the local term of a SUSU investment, wherein persons simply put in their money and they get back what they put in over a period of time. And they leverage on this familiarity among persons to get them more involved into this scheme. We continued our engagement with the public, focusing on publishing articles in the newspaper that led straight from September into October during World Investor Week. So we had the cohesion of messaging coming in. And in tandem with that, we looked at, for World Investor Week, how to become resilient against pyramid schemes, against financial fraud, against scams. And that was the focus for World Investor Week. Financial resiliency means protecting your hard-earned money from scams. And these are some of the messages that we had put out in this regard. I will verify that an investment professional is licensed by contacting the TTSEC. I will conduct research on a product. I will avoid get-rich-quick, can't-lose scams. I will know the importance of due diligence. And these are some of the messages that came to the fore during our I Will campaign. I'll protect my family and friends. So we had to appeal to family life, appeal to the impacts of what this type of scam can include. And then what we were looking at was how do we shape the minds and influence behavior among individuals? So basically, we looked at the online community and how does this influence individual thoughts and feelings? And interestingly enough, we noticed that many persons don't necessarily come forward when they are faced with a dilemma of sorts with the scam, more because they may be ashamed or they're afraid to come forward. And we're speaking directly to emotions and the psychological perceptions and impacts that come with investing in scams. And we followed the conversations online. So we partnered with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in this regard, seeing that they had a larger audience. And it was very much appropriate for us to partner with the police service. And we looked at community conversations, because community conversations, that we noticed that drove individual behavior. And some of the conversations and attitudes that we saw was that people were defending the pyramid schemes. Some of them were getting payouts and some of them were advocating for the scam. And that was a really big trend happening along the conversation line. Many were also blaming banks and insurance companies as those that are purporting to be fraudulent. Some are also speaking to the government. Some are also speaking to the profits being taken away by the police, a number of different things. There were also the very few who were focused on the fact that, and they also realized that pyramid schemes are just that, a scam. And what we were trying to do is join the conversation, try to figure out what's the thinking. And even notice today in the newspaper that the police got in on the conversations as well. So this is our top cop, as we call him, focusing on pyramid schemes and telling persons how it actually works. So what we noticed throughout this this campaign was that there was more engagement happening on social media as it's related to pyramid schemes, and more so the fact that persons generally tended to, there was a great need for money, and persons generally gravitated to what appeared to be achievable at the time. And through the collaboration with different stakeholders, the police and also the media, we were able to increase messaging and increase flow. We also looked at what was appealing to persons. So while there were still images used on social media, we're also looking at right now, leaning more towards animation and having that drive along with humor. We noticed that humor helps to alleviate and also drives messaging home and changing the slant and how we do our social listening across different social media platforms. And this is just a sneak peek of what's to come. So you can look out for us on our different social media pages, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, to see a lot more of what we're doing on the social media front as it relates to pyramid schemes and investment scams and the like. I wish to also thank Errol Cova and those at the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Martin for inviting the Securities and Exchange Commission to deliver this presentation. I now hand you back over to Shakina. Any questions?
Thank you for your presentation, Nicole. Again, as I also indicated with Stewart, we're very glad to have you both also on board. Before we proceed with the next speaker, which is our colleague Errol Cova, I would like to highlight some questions that were particularly regarding the two presentations indicated earlier. So before we proceed with a panel discussion in which we will more likely discuss interchange ideas and thoughts with regards to financial resilience. So one of the questions is actually focused on the other two parties, because it says the TTSEC does a lot regarding fraud. What does the Securities Commissions regarding Bahamas do currently? And also, what does Curacao and St. Martin do on that matter? Stewart, would you like to start with the Bahamas perspective?
Thank you for unmuting me, and thanks for the question. So this has been, it's an interesting question, and it's been an increasing area of focus for us recently. So there have been various public notices that the Commission has put out. We've also, as I said, we did a radio show where our enforcement team appeared on a local radio program as a part of World Investor Week, and really focused on investor education regarding frauds and scams. We also had a webinar specific to the topic where we had the Commissioner of Police join us by a pre-recorded presentation to really talk about financial frauds and scams and the warning signs that you should be aware of. Interestingly, the Bahamas has just passed legislation, the Financial and Corporate Service Providers Act 2020. And we actually criminalize certain financial schemes in that act. And the act is designed to capture pyramids, Ponzi's, and advanced fee fraud schemes specifically. And they are now criminal activities in the Bahamas. So the Commission is going to have some teeth to go after people who are engaged in these particular financial schemes. I think we're one of the earlier jurisdictions to kind of venture into this territory. But it's the kind of problem that we really want to not just be able to talk to, but to be able to do something about. And we're continuing with these efforts. We have a TV show that we're supposed to be doing later at the end of this month or at the beginning of next month. We haven't quite bet down the date yet, it's a local money TV show, and we're going to focus on these issues again. So it's come to the fore. We're doing some things, and we're going to be improving what we're doing. And as Nicole pointed out, this is the age of social media, so we have a lot of social media activities planned around this as well. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, indeed, very insightful and very interesting the way you're tackling this issue. One question related to that before we proceed with also the perspective of Curacao and St. Martin. This question is related to Nicole, but also to Stewart. It states as follows: do you consider pyramid schemes to be the greatest issue in Trinidad and Tobago and also in the Bahamas?
I think I'm still live. If I am, I'll take a first stab at that. It's as far as financial frauds go, it is the type of fraud that is perhaps most pervasive in terms of the number of Bahamians that it can reach. You know, you don't need to have millions of dollars in the bank to be a victim of a pyramid scheme, and it has a broad appeal that really impacts so many people. I don't, in terms of I don't know if I would say it's the greatest. It is just that. It is the type of fraud that has the broadest appeal to local people wherever you are financially. And it just underscores the general need to improve financial literacy, financial capacity, because all of these frauds and scams and schemes, whether they are, again, pyramids, or whether you're a little more advanced and you're getting involved in a Ponzi scheme or something else, I think the answer at the end of the day is still to improve financial resilience, financial knowledge, and financial capability.
Yes, and I echo Stuart's sentiments exactly, because improving financial literacy will help be more aware of the different types of scams that exist, to know the signs of a fraudster in whichever capacity that they decide to come in, whether it's a pyramid scheme or affinity fraud or any other high risk investment that exists out there, and hone in on those skills to be able to better treat with an incident should it happen in the future. Now, the pandemic was an unforeseen, unprecedented event that brought about a new type of scheme, and new different ways in which it's being manifested. And it's just one of the different ways in which we need to be more aware of the different things that can occur in times like these challenging times. And it doesn't mean that it's only going to happen during a pandemic. It will happen when financial shocks occur, no matter what type of event it is. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Nicole and Stewart. Now over to Errol. Would you like to also discuss the perspective from Curacao and St. Martin? I'm going to repeat the two questions that were also covered by Nicole and Stewart. The first one was, given that TTSEC does a lot regarding fraud, and also as the Bahamas discussed, what does Curacao and St. Martin currently do in this perspective? So from the CBCS perspective.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. From the CBCS perspective, so in Curacao, our approach is also twofold. First is our approach as part of our financial resilience program. The second part is our approach of our mandate we have to protect investors and potential investors. So what we have done is we are not quite as as advanced as the Bahamas, as Stewart has now criminal tools to engage. What we do is we resort to name and shame. So early on, we try to tackle fraudulent schemes or the Ponzi schemes at the early stages. So what happened during the pandemic, at the very start of the pandemic, we issued warnings on possible fraudulent activities that we can see as a result of the pandemic. So during the first or second week after the COVID-19 pandemic, we issued an announcement, a warning about the potential activities that fraudsters could engage in terms of getting people to give them money without any merit. So we also have done TV shows. We went on TV to explain all the different types of fraud that we are seeing and that we can potentially see. And what we have seen is that after a couple of weeks in lockdown, many of those fraudulent activities and fraudulent schemes were uprooted in their early stages. That doesn't say that some of them are still active, but we have tried to uproot most of them in their early stages. So as Stewart and also Nicole can attest, we do share our content in our regional universe and in our regional group, so that we can assist each other, especially in frauds and Ponzi schemes, because we see that these types of schemes travel throughout the Caribbean. So it's a global, but for us, it's a regional intensive action and awareness that we want to create in our markets and to make our markets resilient against those types of activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Errol. I don't know whether one of you would like to add something. No, in that case, I'll proceed with another important question before we continue with the presentation of Errol. This one is focused on Bahamas. The question is as follows. Was the I Will initiative a temporary event? So regarding October, maybe also November 2020, or is it something that will be extended for the upcoming years?
Thank you again, Shekina. Thanks for the question. This, I think, again, all of the events that have happened of late, including the pandemic and the hurricanes, have really underscored that financial resilience is just a key concept that we need to we need to inculcate into how we talk about investor education, how we get people to think about what they need to do. And it's definitely going to be a part of our ongoing campaign. So whether it is officially the I Will campaign or whether we couch it as something else, financial resilience, and again, I think the I Will campaign is really how we have chose to address the messaging around, or one of the ways we chose to address the messaging around being more financially resilient. And that's going to be an underlying concept that we carry forward in the Bahamas.
That's great. And then I see here a last question before we proceed, which is also directed to you, Stewart. What contribution do you hope or seek to make through the I Will campaign? But I think you already covered that part. I don't know whether Nicole would like to add to the perspective for Trinidad and Tobago, or whether Stewart would like to add something regarding that, although I think you did cover it already. Nicole, you're good to go, or would you like to add something?
No, I'm fine, thanks, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Then we can proceed with the presentation of my colleague, Errol Cova. Errol, the floor is yours.
Can you guys see my presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be talking about the roadmap to financial resilience. I would like to start with a quote. Give me 1 second. To start with a quote of by Mr. John Adams, the second president of the United States of America, who was one of the first individuals who understood the need to promote financial resilience through financial education and literacy programs. In a letter he wrote to the third U.S. President, Thomas Jefferson, he illustrated the importance of financial literacy by writing, "All the perplexities, confusions, and distress arise not from defects in their constitution or confederation, not from a want of honor or virtue, so much as from downright ignorance of the nature of coin, credit, and circulation." Okay, that is 233 years ago. Mr. Adams already noted the importance of financial literacy and financial resilience. Okay, as Shakina already referred to, we are indeed living in new normal with disasters, disruptions, and volatility. As a result, focus has expanded beyond financial literacy to financial well-being and financial resilience. We are going from back to normal after smaller disruptions to increasingly back to normalcy after more impactful and longer. So these recent shifts have compelled us to implement strategies focused on achieving more financially resilient markets. So as already alluded to, as part of the Caribbean Regional Initiative for IOSCO's World Investor Week, we conducted a survey as part of the I Will initiative. One, to measure the resiliency level in the countries of Curaçao and Sint Maarten. So today, we will share those results of the initial survey. So again, it's the initial survey. We will do follow-up a survey, as Stewart already referred to, without considering the importance of financial resilience that the I Will campaign will be just for this month. So the objective of our survey, first, is to identify the current level of financial resilience in both Curaçao and Sint Maarten, and also to define the necessary tools to develop and/or empower financial resilience of individuals and households, but also the SMEs, so smaller and medium-sized enterprises. First of all, let's start by defining what is resilience and what financial resilience means to us. So according to Merriam-Webster dictionary, resilience means the ability to become strong, healthy, or successful again after something bad happens. So this implies that circumstances are expected to change or at least be disrupted on a regular basis, and the need to adapt, respond, and mostly even thrive. So resilience has to do with getting back on your feet, but getting back better and stronger. So resilience starts with a disruption and then looks at how to recover as efficient as possible. So that's what we want to build in our markets, the ability to get up after a disaster, at least at the same level pre the disaster. And if our resilience is that good, we should get even better than before the disaster struck. So for us, financial resilience is defined as the ability to withstand life events that impact one's income or assets. During these times, it is more important than ever to know how to deal with and endure income changes, and mostly, downwards income changes. So how can we endure, having or expecting less income that we have been expecting? So that is what we're going to try to define. We're going to try to determine how resilient our market is, measure that, and try to focus on, educational programs, awareness programs, outreach programs to try to make our markets more resilient. Okay, it's very important to know that, resilience is getting more and more difficult. What do we mean with more and more difficult? We are now seeing that the disruptions, natural disasters, that they get stronger, they get longer, they get more unexpected. And so what used to be resilient, a couple of years ago, for example, a disruption of 1 day or 2 days or 1 month. Now with COVID-19, we have learned we need to be resilient 6-8 months. So, for example, most of our counterparts in the Caribbean, are still in partial lockdown. So we have been going through this disaster for at least 10 months now. So resilience is not so much being able to face short-term and very short disruptions, but now we see the new normal. We need now to be prepared for longer and more stronger disruptions. Okay, so let's go over the results of our survey. Okay, we start with a business. So we are talking about smaller and medium-sized enterprises, and then we go to the individual and household part of resilience. So it's very interesting what we are seeing here. So we provided our business community with 5 statements. First statement being, my company is financially secure. The second statement being, my company has set aside rainy day funds for 3 months. The third being a very interesting one. If your business temporarily loses its main source of income, are you able to cover your expenses by leveraging your business? I'm sorry. The fourth question was, or statement was, if your business faces a major unexpected expense today of a month's worth of your revenue, would you be able to bear these expenses without leveraging or further leveraging your business? And the fifth statement was, the average monthly income of your business covered your business operating expenses. So what we have seen is, as you can see, the green bars neither agree or disagree, which means people are pretty neutral, showing that people have difficulty measuring their financial security or determining whether they can face any type of disruption. So that's the first very interesting result that we early results that we got. Secondly, if you look at the statement of whether your company is financially secure, there's a 50-50. There's a split of 50% says, okay, we think we're financially secure, and the remainder of the respondents, either don't agree with that or don't know what to say. So that's the first part. If you go to your right side of the screen, asking of where the statement of the average monthly income covering the business expenses, we see that most businesses think that their monthly income cover their expenses. So that's kind of a good sign. Kind of people have the feeling that they can cover their expenses under normal circumstances. Okay, if we go to our second statement, whether companies whether we put aside 3 months worth of rainy day funds, we see again that interesting factor of 50% saying yes, we have rainy day funds, and the other 50% either say no, we don't have it, or I don't know if the funds that we have can last for 3 months. So that's very interesting indeed. And then then we can see the statement about whether a business facing a major unexpected expense today of a month's worth, whether it can still continue doing business without further leveraging their business. And most do not agree. So while businesses, under normal circumstances have financial ability to withstand small shocks, medium-sized shocks already face potential disastrous effects. But if we go to the middle part of your screen, if your business temporarily loses its main source of income, so if you lose your main source of income, whether your business is able to continue operating, and then you see that most say we will not be able to continue operating without our main source of income, not even if we have rainy day funds. So what we are seeing is there's a sense of we can withstand disruptions, smaller disruptions, but there's also a sense, especially after what we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, that any long-term major disruption will disrupt the conduct of medium-sized and smaller-sized businesses. So basically, this picture, the first initial picture is that our businesses, especially the smaller and medium-sized businesses, although financially secure under current normal circumstances, it's not a certainty that they will be resilient under major disruptions or long-term disruptions or disasters. So we asked additional questions to the businesses, the business sector, and three very important issues that they refer to as elements of a resilient business mindset is especially keeping a positive mindset, being flexible and adaptable, and innovative, the part of innovation. So while you face a disruption or a disaster, you need to adapt, and you need to think innovatively in order to continue doing business. Okay. And what the business leaders already also refer to, as a country, what do we need to become resilient as a jurisdiction? They underscored the good governance system that we need to have in place. Many of us, especially in the Caribbean, have encountered governance issues when things are disrupted. So I think that there is work for us to do on a jurisdictional level. Furthermore, contingency plans need to be in place, including rainy day funds, and also the need to be adaptable to changes and disasters and major disruptions. Okay, what they have learned from the COVID-19 resilience, again, COVID is posing challenges that we have never seen before because of the character of the the disruption and the character of the disaster. You know, it has to do with financial health. It has to do with physical health. It has to do with the longevity of the problem. It has to do with the impact of COVID on the global financial markets, on our economies, on our regional economies, and our way we are doing business, and our our everyday conduct of business. So what they have learned is innovation. So the effective use of innovation and technology can aid businesses to adapt and to continue offering their services even in the face of disruptions. That's on one side. They have identified we need to have savings and rainy day funds. This will be a challenge because COVID-19 has taught us that disruptions can be long term, so 10 months, 11 months, 12 months. So there is a challenge of having enough savings for the next long term disruption. So the third point that they learning a point, adaptability to change. Yes, we all need to adapt. We all are adapting. What we're seeing is a new normal. I don't think we can go back to pre COVID-19 situations. Having additional streams of income. Yes, we just saw that when your main source of income, when you cannot count on your main source of income, what this can do to your businesses. So they have identified, that there is a need for additional streams of income, to replace, the fallout of your main source of income. And also, keeping a positive outlook. If you see, has partly to do with being financially resilient and literate. So there are other skills that we need to take into consideration, but we will talk about that in the latter part of my presentation. So if we go to the results of households and individuals, we asked our individuals and our households, okay, what do you need, or how is the best way to ensure that one is financially well and resilient? So what do you need to have in place to be resilient and to have a financial well-being? So the majority, 57%, told us that having sufficient income to cover one's expenses. So again, that is the view many have, on the current circumstances. You need to have, the income to cover the expenses. So then, 44% said you have to be financially literate. So agreeing with Mr. Adams that you have to understand finance, you have to understand, money management in order to be, at least try to be resilient. And 1% said using tools and instruments to manage one's money. So again, it has to do with resilience. It has to do with knowing about money and money management, and it has to do with the accessibility of money. So having money, knowing what to do with money, and having access to money. So those three items were items, earmarked by individuals and households for them to be considered resilient. Okay, so there were other points raised. So again, and the need to have savings, the need to have additional income streams as a household, and then controlled spending. So your ability to control your spending and adapt those spending. So when disruptions hit, how can we control those spendings and keep them within our sphere of the income stream that we are receiving under duress or under stress. So this is very interesting as well. So we try to measure the resiliency under individuals in our households in Curacao, and we made the same 5 statements. So whether they feel financially secure, whether income cover their living expenses, whether they have set aside emergency funds, whether if they face a major expense equivalent of a month's income, whether they still can pay their expenses, and the middle part of our screen. If you lose your main source of income, whether you still need to go and leverage as a household to cover your expenses. So, you kind of see the same development with our businesses. First of all, people think they are financially secure, although 30%, they are afraid to financially secure because they don't know. Many of our households, so above 50%, 55% of our household think that they can cover their living expenses currently. The normal circumstances, about 70% can cover their current living expenses. Then, we start trying to get a feel of their true resilience. About 45% have emergency funds for at least 3 months of disruption. And then you have about 35% that don't have any, or at least don't have the 3 months worth of emergency funds. Most say they can weather, a hit of 1 month's worth of salary, but then we get to the middle of the screen. What if, as a household or as an individual, you lose your main source of income? Then you see that more than 60%, or at least almost 70% of respondents say that if we lose our main source of income, we will not be able to cover our expenses. So smaller disruptions, normal circumstances, there is a sense of security, financial security. But as soon as you get a full, large scale, a big setback where either you don't have accessibility to your money or you don't have income, it becomes very difficult for these households to deal with the disruption. So there is, this is the initial picture that we're getting. So there is a sense of, okay, we think we are financially secure. We think we can weather, smaller storms. But as soon as, we hit with major disruption, where we won't get our salaries, or at least we lose one of the main salaries of our household, there's a sense that we lose, our ability to face those disruptions. So, I think we can hereby conclude that financial security and financial ability, or your financial ability to cover expenses, not necessarily equate financial resilience. So I think we need to educate our households in terms of preparing for the worst case scenarios, for a larger short-term disruptions. So that's the first picture that we're getting. So what are the lessons learned, as a jurisdiction and as a regulator about disruptions and financial resilience? First, become resilient takes effort and time. So it's not like, it's a one-time action. Okay, now I have a couple of $1,000, I'm resilient. No, resilience is a mixture of competencies rather than one specific action. That's one. Then being banked and have money in your bank not necessarily makes you resilient. So you need to have smart and adaptable financial infrastructure. So you need to make sure that during a disruption, you have access to your finances. Okay. Then resilience has to do with having the proper mindset, and it's a consequence of making choices and preparation. So it's not about having money. So it's having money and making choices and preparing. So it's a combination of skills that we see that makes one resilient. And also financial resilience, which is very important, because if you don't have your finances, I think every other resilience aspect will be adversely affected. We see that mental resilience, physical resilience, emotional resilience, and social resilience are equally important to thrive during and especially after a crisis. So what we see is, although financial resilience is important and it affects all the other factors of resilience, we need to have all of those skills, so mental, physical, emotional, and social skills, to go through a pandemic, to go through a crisis, to go through a disruption. So what's the road ahead? What do we see with the road ahead? So on a community level and on a jurisdictional level. And finally, we have to agree with Mr. Adams. President Adams was absolute for stating the need to understand the nature of money to be financially resilient, because it is proven that individuals with access to financial services and enhanced financial skills are better equipped to face disruptions, thus potentially are better